You don't trade the news. You wait for it to justify relapse. The calendar isn't a tool. It's your permission slip to panic with purpose, to self-destruct, and call it volatility. You're not reading the market. You're feeding off it. Every FOMC drop, every CPI spike is just your alibi to press enter without restraint. You say, this is the move. But what you mean is, this is my chance to feel something strong enough to drown everything else out. You're not here for opportunity. You're here for chaos. That feels earned. Because when it's scheduled, you don't have to admit you were going to blow up anyway. The news didn't catch you off guard. You lined up for it. Watched the countdown. Felt the surge before the candle moved. And when gold explodes, you don't trade. You unload your fear onto a chart and beg it to give you control. This isn't reaction. It's ritual. 1 minute madness that you timed in advance so you can call your collapse a setup. You don't wait for confirmation. You wait for ignition. You stare at the candle, not to read it, but to brace for it. You're not interpreting data. You're counting down to detonation. You say you're ready. But your plan is just react fast before the fear catches up. You call it anticipation. It's not. It's desperation, waiting for a reason to release itself. Every FOMC session, you prime yourself. Check the spreads. Reset your MT4. Mark up gold, as if precision will protect you from the decision you've already made. You were going to enter, no matter what came out of Powell's mouth. You just needed a headline to blame it on. The volatility isn't the risk. It's the excuse. Because without it, you'd have to admit you're trading emotions with economic data as the cover story. You tell yourself, this is the breakout I've waited for. But you didn't wait. You needed this breakout to happen. You needed a reason to blow past your rules and feel justified. Because when the chart moves, you get to feel alive again. When gold spikes, you feel like you're in control. Even though the truth is, you're just the fastest one to lose your center. You call it trading the event, but you don't have a system. You have a trigger, a candle, a keyword, a flicker of movement, and your fingers are already there. Risk management disappears. Lot size swells. Stop loss delayed. You widen the zone to match the size of your adrenaline. Because this isn't about the setup. It's about the surge. You don't want a measured entry. You want the hit. You want the market to slam you into focus. You need that spike to numb the noise, the guilt, the fatigue, the whisper that says, you've been trading all week and still feel like a fraud. So you pick the moment when the world is already shaking and call it strategy. But this isn't trading gold. It's gold trading you, dragging your worth through every candle, as if volatility could validate your instinct. You don't trust your plan. You trust the chaos, because it gives you something louder than the doubt you refuse to sit with. And the worst part? You know it. You know this move isn't clean. You know the candle doesn't care. But you hit enter anyway. Because pain, with a calendar, feels better than silence without a plan. The fallout doesn't come when gold spikes. It comes 5 minutes after, when your trade is floating, but your breathing isn't. When you're still glued to the screen, watching the 1-minute chart like it owes you something. You can't walk away, even when you're up, because it was never about profit. It was about sedation. Now that the candle's slowing, you feel the panic rise again. You add another position. You convince yourself you're managing risk. But really, you're managing withdrawal. You don't want to win. You want to stay inside the moment where you don't have to feel lost. And that moment is already fading. So you double down, size up, chase the second impulse, because the first one didn't fix you. This is where the spiral takes root, not in the volatility, but in the silence that follows it. You open more charts. Flip to GBP news. Flip to NASDAQ. You tell yourself, you're still in trader mode. But the truth is, you're just afraid of stillness. Because stillness is where the regret waits, where the trade you forced comes into full view, where you realize you never had a plan, just a reflex with a countdown. And that realization doesn't make you stop. It makes you hide. You stop journaling. You stop logging the session. You rename the folder. You label it New Scalp and bury it with the others. Your rules erode. Not all at once, but in invisible layers. One wider stop loss. One skipped confirmation. One trade that shouldn't have been taken, but the candle was already moving. And each time you get away with it, the collapse digs deeper. Because you mistake survival for mastery. Eventually, you can't trade without a calendar. Normal sessions feel empty. Clean setups feel boring. You don't want structure anymore. You want impact, not profit. Impact. Something to knock you awake. Something to shock your body into feeling present again. But the presence never lasts, because the hit never satisfies. You're not building skill, you're building tolerance to noise, to panic, to regret, until trading becomes a cycle of emotional ignition followed by emotional debt. And that debt collects fast, not just in your account, but in your mind, in your sleep, in your confidence. You don't trust your calm anymore. You think you need chaos to feel like a trader, but you're not trading volatility. You're feeding off it, and it's draining you faster than any loss ever could. You've convinced yourself volatility is the edge, but it's just the only state you still feel alive in. You don't trade gold during news because it makes sense. You trade it because it gives you permission to lose control without admitting you lost it. You pretend you're waiting for the data, but the data doesn't matter. You already know what you'll do the second the candle moves. You're not reacting to news. You're reacting to fear you never learned to sit with. Here's your next step win. Delete the news calendar from your screen. No excuses. No, just want to check the forecast. If it's visible, you'll use it. Not for strategy, for relapse. You can't trade clean while keeping the needle loaded. Remove the countdown, and you remove the crutch. You'll feel the panic rise. That's the point. You've been dodging that feeling by scheduling your breakdowns and branding them sessions. But breakdowns don't need calendars. They need honesty. And honesty starts when you stop setting alarms for your own self-destruction. You think the news event is your moment. It's not. It's your mask. The excuse that lets you trade without owning the motive. The motive isn't opportunity. It's overwhelm. It's guilt, disguised as urgency. It's the lie you whisper right before the spike. This one will fix it. But nothing gets fixed in chaos. The high-impact sessions aren't high impact because of the numbers. They're high impact because you go into them already bleeding, already hoping for a hit big enough to silence everything else. But silence doesn't come from spikes. It comes from space, from removing the noise you've been clinging to. So take the space, rip out the trigger, delete the tool you've turned into a trap. Because you won't outtrade this pattern. You'll only end it by refusing to perform it. No one needs to know. Just close it, delete the tab, erase the countdown, then sit with what's left. The unease, the lack of plan, the twitch that can't find an outlet. That's where your edge lives. Not in the volatility, but in your refusal to be consumed by it. You've tried to manage this with risk settings. Now try removing the ritual. Because until you do, you're not trading gold. You're gambling with your ability to focus. And focus dies every time you confuse panic for purpose. You never needed the news. You needed a reason to lose control without having to admit it. FOMC wasn't the trigger. You were. You chased a spike so you could feel powerful for 5 seconds before the fallout came. You called it volatility, but it was just addiction on a schedule. The calendar didn't trap you. You circled it yourself, then waited for the explosion you secretly hoped would come. Not for the profit, for the relief, for the temporary erasure of everything still unresolved inside you. This isn't gold. It's your guilt, dressed in price movement. And every trade you take, without confronting that, just deepens the lie you've been building around your collapse. You didn't trade the breakout. You traded the permission to avoid stillness for one more session. But now you've seen it. So the next time that clock starts ticking, ask yourself, what are you really waiting for? This video confronts behavior. It does not define identity.